Just trying to get back from dropping folks off. How are you doing?
Good, good. All right. Welcome to the meeting. I'm going to go ahead and hi, Elle. How are you? And Kendra. We're recording the meeting so for those who can't be here, and I'm going to, hey, go ahead and share my screen. So today we are going to be refining strategies and applying the equity screening tool. So the objectives for today are understanding the community priorities. We keep revisiting those because it's really important to thread all of our strategies with those priorities, and then apply the equity screening tool to ensure that that language is in there and we are considering all aspects of equity. And then we're going to prepare draft strategies for review by city administration and the RVAgreen 2050 roundtable. So we're very grateful for you to be here because we have a lot of work ahead of us. When we are going through the strategies, please consider aiming for consensus. We're definitely looking for all of your input, all of the great ideas, but we're trying to get to that I can live with that statement. So just to revisit the structure, we've made it all the way down to strategies. And when we're thinking about them, we want to think, what are the SMARTY actions? We'll go through what that stands for, but what are the actions that will lead us toward our objectives? So as you're brainstorming in this activity, keep referring back to what your objective is so that we can make sure that it's all relatable. And then the next step is going to be the implementation plans. We'll be working on that this summer. So in terms of the specifics, how are we going to implement and measure and ensure accountability? Those kinds of details will come later. So you don't need to dig down into that level today. So again, we're focusing on those actions that will lead to the objectives. In terms of where we are in our process, very exciting. We're moving right along. We are into just about through the foundation setting, drafting strategies portion of our process. Next is going to be the community engagement in April. And then throughout the summer, we'll be refining strategies based on that feedback and drafting the implementation plans. Then it'll go back out for community engagement in August and September. We'll finalize the draft plan content. And by the end of the year, we should have a solid plan that'll go out for community engagement next winter, and then looking for council approval in the spring. So we have a big year ahead of us. Looking forward to really getting this finalized and processed. So in terms of where we are now with these drafting strategies, just to remind you, what we have to present to you today for your review are statements that incorporated a lot of materials. We had technical information, modeling, risk assessments. We had policy inputs from the community priorities and our GreenLink consultants, their policy toolkit, examples from other cities. We added that plus your ideas plus Richmond 300 objectives and strategies and came up with a preliminary checklist where we decided, does it really reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Are they just great ideas, or are they really getting at our goal of this plan, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions or increase resilience to climate change? And is it equitable? With a high level review. So between the last meeting and this meeting, we took all of those ideas that you discussed and we combined them and we moved them to other working groups if they belonged somewhere else. We took out the ideas that didn't really get at what our plan is working towards. They were just those good ideas. And then we identified where we might need additional refinement and identified some gaps. So now we have a revised strategy list for today. And we're going to take those and do two things to them. The first is we're going to refine the language where we need to make sure that the strategies are meet our SMARTY framework. Specifically today we're looking at the strategic, the ambitious, and the realistic. Don't worry so much about the measurable and the time bound. Those will come out in the implementation stage. but we do want to make sure that they are strategic, ambitious, and realistic. And then we'll also be using the equity screening tool to meet the inclusive and equitable criteria. So then what we come up with today, based on your feedback, is going to be refined for city staff and roundtable review. Good morning, Katrina. Okay, so again, this is where we are today, refining an equity screening tool, and then this next one, the next meeting that we'll have is going to be reviewing all of the feedback that we get back from city staff and roundtable, and then this is going out to the broader community. So I'm going to have Brianne introduce a little more specifically how we're incorporating the community priorities to create those strategies.
Well, thanks, Dawn. So as a reminder, we've talked about this a few times before, at least. Last summer, when we started the RVAgreen 2050 planning process in earnest, we went out to the community, and this is mostly through the work of our community engagement coordinator, Kendra Norrell, and we asked different organizations, individuals, groups, community leaders, what their priorities are, what their strengths, what their challenges are, just generally. We did this so that we could get a sense of what the community wants and needs, that we could then connect to this climate action and resilience plan. So other than, the small group of us who on a daily basis might think about, climate change, reducing greenhouse gas emissions as an actual priority for ourselves, other people in our community are thinking about other things like the need for affordable housing, education, engagement with the government, things like that. And so one of the things we're going to be asking you all to do today is to think about how we can make our strategies within this waste pathway more relevant to the community at large, and also more equitable and inclusive by seeing where we have opportunities to connect them to these priorities. Dawn, you can go to the next slide. So what I want to walk through is just a few examples of some areas that we heard about from the community as being priorities, and how we might connect them to climate action and resilience. Not all of these are going to be applicable to this group, but again, just a few examples to get us thinking. So to start off with, on transportation. So one of the things that we heard from the community when we did our listening sessions is that Richmonders want improved access to jobs, and within that, so that means transportation, to jobs, but also better paying jobs. We also know that in our region, generally, very few jobs are accessible within what we would say is like a reasonable commute time if you don't have a vehicle. So if you need to ride the bus or walk or bike to work, you have definitely less access to jobs. We also have a significant portion of the Richmond community that does not have access to a vehicle. So when I looked yesterday, about 15% of Richmond households do not have a vehicle at all. And about another 40% have one vehicle. So if there's more than one working adult in the household, that means one person may not have a way to get to work other than those other options. At the same time, on the climate action side, we know that we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and pollution from things like private vehicle travel. And so if we come up with solutions like, for example, making transit more accessible, expanding transit across our region, that can not only provide more access to jobs and well-paying jobs, but also cut down on the potential increase in greenhouse gas emissions from people accessing those jobs. Dawn, you can go to the next slide. And another example, this is in sort of the housing area. So when we went out to the community again last summer, one of the probably things we heard most often was the need for more affordable housing in Richmond. We know we are not going to solve the affordable housing crisis with this climate action and resilience plan, but there are connections to be made here that can help with that issue. So we know that energy burden, or the amount that households pay for their energy and utility bills, is a contributing factor to things like evictions. So especially when we have extreme weather, whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold or storms, we might have households that are in buildings that are less efficient, less able to deal with those weather changes, where people are paying more for their energy bills to keep them either cool or warm. Disproportionately, this is impacting people of color, as well as low-income households. And this is contributing to the eviction problem that we have here in Richmond. So as we think about solutions on the climate action and resilience side, if we were to, say, promote or incentivize or have a program specifically tailored to helping to weatherize and make housing more energy efficient, especially for areas where we have these historically disenfranchised communities, we can help to ease that energy burden and allow for more of the household income to go towards things like rent. Dawn, you can go to the next slide. All right, and then another example, sort of in the natural environment area, this is one that you all may have heard about through the work of Jeremy Hoffman at the Science Museum of Virginia. A few years ago, our office partnered with him and a number of other entities to conduct an urban heat island assessment of the city. What we found through that and additional research was that the same neighborhoods are affected by a number of different issues. They are hotter, they also have less trees, they also have more paved surfaces, and then they also have more people with things like asthma or health conditions that could make them more susceptible to things like heat-related illnesses. The contributing factor to all of these inequities, of course, is our history in our city of racist policies and programs like redlining that have segregated where people are living now. So on the solution side, one of the things that we heard from the community is that they want, more safe and beautiful neighborhoods, including green space. And so by providing more green space, we can hit a number of these issues, including the community priority, as well as reducing the urban heat island effect, providing more tree canopy that potentially reduces things like energy bills during the summer, with another number of other benefits. Next slide. And then the last example, this is probably the one that maybe is most relevant to this group, but on sort of the waste end of things, one of the things that we heard from the community, again, last summer, is that within this idea of safe and beautiful neighborhoods, littering is a big concern for a lot of people, especially in areas where we have historically disenfranchised communities. Nationwide, race is actually the most significant indicator or predictor of whether a person will live near something like contaminated air, water, or soil. Again, this goes back to decades of historic and persisting racist policies and programs. So as we think about things like climate action and resilience strategies related to waste, we could, for example, think about how in our community right now, a lot of renter households, particularly those who live in larger multifamily buildings, do not have access to services like curbside recycling. By providing that service to them and expanding that across the community, we could potentially, one, provide that as an actual service, which is more equitable to provide that to a variety of households, and also provide those facilities and services that could potentially cut down on things like litter in those communities. So that's it on the community priorities. Again, these were just a few examples, and we know that you all probably have a lot more. So we want you to bring that lived experience and the ideas that you have to today's activity as we look to make our strategies more relevant and inclusive and equitable for the community.
Great. Thank you so much, Brianne. So those were some great examples of how we're trying to tie all this together. And so this equity screening tool that was created by you and the other working groups in the roundtable is going to get us to, it's kind of a process to think through those bigger ideas. So on the email I sent this morning, there's an attachment to a PDF that has the equity screening tool on it. So if you wanted to have that kind of out while we're in our breakouts, that might help. But I just want to walk through these four components. These first four: community wealth, housing and buildings, neighborhoods, and health and well-being, are the topical areas that we really want to get to. We want to consider if each strategy is, could it, under community wealth, could it create jobs? Does it support the historically disenfranchised communities through workforce development, contracting opportunities, or increased diversity of employees and staff across sectors? Are the benefits accessible to households and businesses throughout the community, particularly communities of color, low-income populations, minority, women, emerging small businesses? Will this create workforce training opportunities that offer living wages and support a product or service wanted and needed in the community? So these are the kinds of components we want to build into our strategies if you see that opportunity. For housing and buildings, for that priority consideration, will this strategy that we're proposing reduce the number of families that are cost burdened by housing and transportation? Does it reduce inequities in housing and building quality related to health and safety? Could this increase access to housing in general and to home ownership? And of course, you want to be careful about gentrification and how you're affecting housing costs. And then for neighborhoods, those priority considerations, you'll ask questions like, could this expand access to healthy, clean, and accessible transportation? Could this strategy increase access to quality green space in historically disenfranchised communities? Could this increase and ensure long-term access to amenities in historically disenfranchised communities? And for health and well-being, does this address the health impacts of climate change? Certainly if we're talking about trash, litter, solid waste, be thinking about those health impacts. Could this reduce food insecurity if we're putting in community gardens and thinking about compost and where our agriculture is coming from, food waste? Think about those ideas. Could this reduce stress, anxiety, and depression and increase happiness? I think that should be at the top of the list, right? So those are the four topical areas we're really going to be thinking through. If we have time, these are the more three procedural elements of the equity screening tool. And so on your breakout, you'll see that there are 7 columns. The first 4 are those topical areas, and then the next 3 are the racial equity and environmental justice, engagement and communication, government accountability. Just as important, but the community working group is spending a lot of time on that, creating objectives and strategies on equitable engagement and government accountability that'll be cross-cutting for all of the strategies. And the racial equity and environmental justice is, incorporated in all of this, especially with using our climate equity tool. It's really centered around racial equity, as we've spent a lot of time talking in previous meetings with that capacity building. So on that PDF, you have all 7 of these. This is the tool. These are the questions you'll want to be referring to, and please come back to it if needed, as needed. So for today's activity, what we're doing is again going through each strategy, each draft strategy, and deciding, is it strategic, ambitious, and realistic? So this first example, reduce residential water consumption. That's not really strategic, ambitious. Is it realistic? Probably not, because it doesn't have anything to it. So adding some additional language like restructure residential water and wastewater fees and billing procedures to incentivize reduced water consumption, that gets a little, closer to what we're asking for. But then to add additional language that makes it inclusive and equitable would be something like adding this second statement, and use clear language and graphics to communicate fees and ways to reduce usage and charges. And then a second example, instead of just increase public parks access, for us it might be expand curbside recycling. You want to add some additional language like establish an annual budget for the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Department to acquire new public park space. And then to actually make it inclusive and equitable, you could say in neighborhoods with the highest urban heat island impacts. So that's just kind of an example of where we're trying to get to. So for today's activity, we're going to divide into breakout rooms based on which objective you'd like to work on. We're not going to do the round robin style. You'll still have an opportunity to go back in and look at the others and add anything that you want to until the end of the day tomorrow. But we're going to spend an hour in a breakout room just looking at one objective and all of the strategies under there, so we can make sure that we really have some good recommendations to move forward on. So I will be in this main room. If you want to stay back, I'm going to be talking about modeling zero waste through municipal operations. And then Brianne is going to be in breakout room 1 looking at reduce commercial waste. David is breakout room 2, reduce residential waste, and Wendy is breakout room 3, reduce industrial waste. So your task, and maybe I should go ahead and show you. This is what it looks like. So if you're with me, we'll be walking through each of these strategies together, revising the language to make it strategic, ambitious, realistic. And I'm going to be, the facilitators are taking the notes, so you don't have to worry about that today. It's just a conversation, but we will be sharing our screen so you can see this. And then we'll go through these. We'll start with these 4 topical areas: community wealth, affordable housing, beautiful, safe neighborhoods, and health. And we're going to, ask the question, is there a component to this strategy that that is met in the that meets those priorities? If yes, a little bit of conversation how you see that, so we have that in our notes. If not, could we make it better? And we want to capture those comments as well. And then again, if you get through your strategies, then we would love to get more input on the other 3 procedural areas of racial equity, equitable engagement, and government accountability. So that's what the activity looks like. Again, you'll want to kind of refer back to your objective with each of these strategies. Is this action getting at that objective? Because it's easy to go off in tangents. So on here now, I don't know if you all, I did email this link out earlier today, and I think Wendy put the link to this slide deck in the chat. So if you are able to open it and you want to put your name, go ahead and go to slide 20 and type your name under the objective that you want to be on. And if you can't access it, you can just tell Wendy and she can type it in for you. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting the breakout rooms set up, and we'll take a 5-minute break. But before I do that, does anyone have any questions that you want to ask me? Okay. All right. So it's 9:26. We'll come back at 9:31, and you will be sent into a breakout room. We'll get going. Okay, so from my group, I'm gonna run to the restroom and I'll be right back. All right. So, um, I know you. Do you know each other? Do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself? Hey, Jeannie, I like your glasses.
Hi, thanks. I'm cleaning my commercial kitchen right now, so I thought you guys should be spared the sights and sounds of that. So you might
No.
not see me, but I'm here.
Oh, I love seeing your big smile. So, are you baking anything today?
Yeah, actually, as soon as I finish with this, I'm doing these little, I don't know if you've ever seen Italian peach cookies, but they actually, oh my gosh, Google them. They're beautiful. They look like peaches, but I'm doing a clementine version. So it's a cookie that actually looks like this sparkly, sugary clementine.
Oh my
And
goodness.
then I'm doing like these really great blueberry muffins with a ton of blueberry and I'm like a lemon sugar on top. I know it's gonna be a good box this week. And then I made like paydays. The candy is payday bars. So those are all done.
Oh my.
Yeah, so today's gonna be a long baking day, but I had to get some things done. We had to do some things in my kitchen yesterday, and the mess is amazing. So I'm like cleaning every surface before I start today. So you
Wow.
might not see me, but I'm here.
That's awesome. Hey, Tom. Oh, did he leave us? Okay.
Oh, we did?
Tom Griffin was here. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw him. He was on our group. Okay, so that sounds delicious. Oh my gosh. And what's so fun is you always have a big smile on your face. You're talking about these delicious baked goods with a big smile. Can I just
And
ask,
I don't eat any of them. I don't like sweets.
really?
So no,
Oh,
I really
wow.
know. Like we have so many sweets in our house right now and they always go bad and I end up giving them to the chickens and the birds.
Oh
So
my gosh.
Wow.
I know.
All right, so Katrina. Oh, and Jeannie's on the round table. So she's our representative, or she and
Oh,
Kate.
right.
Yep,
Mhm.
representing the
Right.
roundtable. So
Right.
you can definitely help us add the equity piece to this because that's you're very rehearsed in that area.
Mhm.
And then you are you on the Clean City Commission?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And Katrina, we talked about this. It's great that the Clean City folks are really actually pretty excited about this. So
Mhm.
we
All
can
right.
look for some partnerships there maybe.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So Katrina, you want to introduce yourself?
I am Katrina Ensminger. I'm new to the Department of Public Works in operations and maintenance. So I work directly underneath Torrance, the deputy director for operations and maintenance as a management analyst. And I am here to, well, I view my role as sort of a liaison to um, all of the initiatives, making sure that we're on board as a city servant and office, and also give the perspective from a city operation standpoint of what we already do and what people are going to turn their eyes up and say that's going to cost too much, etc. But sort of just really be a part of making as strong a partnership as possible between all the work that's going on with the RV Green 2050 and with the city.
Awesome. Thank you. Very important components. All right, Elle.
Hi, my name is Elda La Cancela. I use she, her pronouns. I am here, as like, I guess a representative from the like nonprofity kind of EJ world. So I work for the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, as their like Central Virginia person. So I don't have too much technical expertise, but I hope that some of the other more social considerations, I can lend at least some ear to. But yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else I'm missing about my general
That's
bio.
perfect. I think this is great because we have, the round table, we have the operations, and we have lived experience, local advocate, kind of speaking from there. And then Kendra is from our office. I'm not sure if she is, I know she's doing two things at once, but she's welcome to speak up and participate if she wants.
Yeah, I don't know what I can add, but throw things away. Okay, let me stop. Okay, I'm backing off.
Kendra's fun. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen, right? You can see the spreadsheet.
Yeah, but it's really tiny for my somewhat mature eyes. So
I know. I have it on
Not
a big
just you.
screen. Make it bigger. How about that?
that's much better.
All right. So, model zero waste through municipal operations. And this one, we really want to make sure that we're considering City of Richmond buildings, City of Richmond parks, facilities, the stuff that we have specific control over. It's really easy to start thinking about our services, our, curbside pickup, and so it's going to be hard to draw lines between. Does this fall under a residential, recycling, or does this fall under what we can model through municipal operations? So for the most part, we're going to try to keep it to city government buildings. So this first one, think globally, act locally. Create regional and intersectional partnerships across Richmond's neighbors and sectors to promote a holistic and unified waste reduction and recovery framework. And what we're saying there is that we're doing that. The City of Richmond is going to try to create this partnership. And so maybe, Katrina, Jeannie, is that something that you feel like Public Works and the Clean City Commission would be willing to take on or be part of some kind of committee? I don't know. What would that look like? Is that realistic? Is there some revised language that we should add to that?
I think it's accurate and perfect. We've talked in the Clean City Commission about partnering more, not only the city partnering with the commission, but the commission partnering with other community groups.
Right.
To make things happen. For example, one thing that I've really been working on is we have these little hot spots of litter within the city, and then someone calls and the city crews go in and pick up the litter. And so we've talked in our Clean City Commission meeting about getting volunteers out to pick those things up and developing signage around, anti-litter campaign. But then last meeting, you were talking about that New York strategy of I can't remember it now. Darn it, I wrote it down. But it was basically don't throw it out, reuse it. And so I was thinking, well, the Clean City, if we're going to develop campaigns and signage, it'd be wonderful to incorporate not only don't litter, stop throwing stuff in this ditch, but also reuse, repurpose these things. So if you've got a plastic bottle, instead of throwing it out the window into the ditch, this is actually something that can be recycled and reused. And so one of the things I really want the commission to work on, and Jeannie is on the communications committee that's working on wording and campaigns, is how can we not only steer people away from littering, but also toward repurposing, reusing, recycling, going towards zero waste, et cetera.
And one of the hurdles to doing this is that, I think we talked about in one of our meetings here, is that so many folks, especially in historically ignored neighborhoods, don't even know what some of the terms are. I think someone used green space, either in the social equity roundtable meeting or this one, when, they brought up green space at a meeting. Folks at a neighborhood association meeting said, I don't even know what that means. So when we do this, we need to make sure that everything we do is centered around giving folks the educational tools to understand why it's important to do it, and also giving them the definitions of the terms of art, if that's what we're using, or if we're not going to use those terms of art, then and I do remember us having this conversation in one of our meetings, making sure we put it in terms and phrases, not only using a term like green space, but then also saying, parks and open areas where you can walk with your kids, just to give them those definitions and have an education component in there. Because especially in like my neighborhood in Highland Park, there's no education about any of this. They just get phrases and terms and policies from our city council person in an email, if they even get the emails, and nobody explains it. So it has there's no meaningful impact in their lives as far as they can see.
Yeah, meaningful impact. So should we add something to this about that? Think globally, act locally, create regional and intersectional partnerships to promote. Should it say like to promote and educate?
And educate, maybe.
So that it's.
Yeah.
I think adding the term educate in there is important.
Yeah.
I have a question. How specific are we getting in this sort of like prescriptive aspect? Like, are we talking about where or how that education is happening, or is that at a further step?
Yep, the implementation will talk about where and how, but we want to add language here that is at least
Directing.
or that's directing. It's incorporating those communities that we think need to be elevated in this statement. So if we want to focus on and educate so that it's relatable to previously or disenfranchised communities or underserved communities, is that a statement you'd like me to add to this strategy?
Yes, I mean, I definitely agree with the need to educate. I guess I was just wondering, or my fear being like, okay, we're going to hold another community meeting where folks have to dedicate their time to try to go out and learn things that they don't really necessarily care about or don't see the connection to their lives, as opposed to like implementing like education if we're talking about municipal, like as a part of like an orientation that all new city employees receive, or like it's in public schools as like kind of a more or there's a renewed focus on that. I think that's where I was getting at, but perhaps I think that I'm jumping the gun, or I'm a little trigger happy with that.
I like that. I want to capture that. So you're saying in schools and trainings for all government employees?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what is within the realm of like municipal.
Right.
Because I think that like when you talk about kind of like incentivization for like businesses to like repurpose and reuse, or to like form partnerships with other like organizations that could use kind of their waste or whatever, that requires
Well, that's
different kind of money.
it does. And the commercial group and the industrial groups have strategies like that.
Right.
So you're right to bring this back to what's within our control. I appreciate that. So anything else? This is a great conversation. Are there any other thoughts about this one, especially as it relates to government accountability, equitable engagement, racial equity, health, beautiful, safe neighborhoods, affordable housing, and community wealth?
I think the government accountability aspect is going to be like pretty key here, because you can like create a partnership with like Henrico County, but not have any like checks or balances built within it. So that way, like things are actually getting done. You can just have like this name. And so I'm not sure if that means that they have some relationship with like the DEQ, like if they are to set up some sort of like regional thing, like who oversees to make sure that they are meeting the benchmarks that they set for themselves. And I think that having that kind of report back to a state agency lends itself to like a pilot program that could be implemented elsewhere. So like the idea that Richmond and like the greater Richmond metro area can be a forerunner for, and maybe not exactly translate over to like Tidewater region, Hampton Roads, but can serve as a baseline model. So I think that having some sort of interchange there would be beneficial. Not that I'm like the biggest fan necessarily of like the regulations of the DEQ all the time, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah, but and I think, didn't we actually have this conversation in one of our other meetings? Like, what is the accountability piece of this? Like, how do we hold people accountable, and what consequences are there for not meeting your standards? It's all fine and good to say we have these standards that have to be met, but then when they don't meet them and everyone just goes, well, we didn't meet them this year. Here's our annual report that says we, failed, and then nothing happens. What changes?
Right. That's very true.
That's excellent. I really like that. Okay. What happened to it?
Oh, hit undo quickly.
I think, oh, yeah, there we go.
That was scary. I had more than that though.
Yeah, you lost your government accountability part. Oh, there we go.
All right, I'm not going to touch the formatting anymore. It's tricky because there are other people working on this too, and so it's easy to mess each other up if we're not careful. Okay, so we've got racial equity. Is there any other language that you
Under the health part, I wonder if there could also be partnerships with the local chapters of the Lung Association, or, I'm just, trying to filter through my head some of the
what's
health issues
interesting?
related to,
Yeah, we have a doctor, Michael Donnenberg, who is on the Buildings and Energy Group, because he is a huge advocate for climate mitigation and, the effects of climate change on human health. And so he's always trying to make us remember, like, the health community, the hospitals, they want to partner on these things too. So I like that.
yeah.
And we have a city health program. Vernon Johns is not still open, is it? I can't remember. But we have city health facilities that could also be looped into this, because we've got traditionally disenfranchised communities are the people who take advantage of like the Vernon Johns Health Center, or some of the other places in town where they can go to get things like blood pressure checked, and their free mammograms, and asthma, have asthma issues taken care of. And those are all directly related to climate change.
Yeah.
I wonder also, this is kind of a little bit of a non sequitur, but whether this partnerships for like regional development can include kind of like disaster planning, if that's a part of it, just so that way we make sure that it's built into the program, because like the James is gonna flood, like it has before, it continues to, like we just passed legislation, what, 2019, to like prevent our untreated sewage from entering it, which is like gross. It is what it is, but so maybe being able to like recognize like not just building resilience for the right now immediately what we can see as the problems, but like the anticipatory aspect and like the incoming also, like, yeah, I don't know how to phrase this.
Well,
The
there's one in here somewhere. Where is it? Might be under industrial.
Oh, okay.
Um, wonder where it went. Something about emergency, facilitate regional cooperation of waste management during catastrophic events.
See, I feel like that shouldn't be on the industry. You know what I mean? Like it can be a shared responsibility. You need industry input, but like we want that to be kind of, again, the checks and balances comes in with the government accountability aspect.
Okay, I think you're right. So what if I should just move it all together? Well, I'll leave it in case
Copy
they,
it.
yeah, in case they want to add to that.
Also, as we think about kind of like the possibility of our like increasing population for like whatever sorts of reasons, whether that because we're growing as a city because everybody wants to move to Richmond, or because we're getting an influx of folks from Portsmouth that are displaced, like being able to, yeah, like build with growth in mind.
Okay, so we're talking about, what did I do? Did I bring the wrong one? I think I brought the wrong one. Um,
Sorry, I feel like I'm overcomplicating, perhaps.
no, this is excellent stuff. I've been staring at these for days, so this is really helpful. I just don't want to lose what you're saying.
Mhm.
So let me put this in first. Okay, so we're thinking waste management, resiliency, catastrophic events. What else do we want to add to that strategy?
Mm,
And maybe you just want to start over with what you were saying about resilience.
yeah, I think that I was talking about kind of as climate related issues like will continue to be exacerbated, whether that's dealing with like an influx of individuals, so like just more people in the city, whether we're dealing with kind of the again, this might be tapping into something else, but like landfills and like kind of the hazardous air pollutants that happen with increased temperatures, whether we talk about kind of like thermal expansion, increased flood risk, and what areas, get flooded with this untreated, so because those are kind of are similar sides of the same coin. Um, yeah, I think just having municipal strategies to deal with catastrophic events in general is, maybe somebody with more waste technical expertise can outline kind of what every single one of those is. Those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Make that a strategy, and then implementation would probably get to the details of it. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, that might end up being a separate strategy, but it relates. So I'll leave it there for now. While we're talking about that, do others have ideas on, you know, catastrophic, or so severe storms and flooding? I think Torrance brought this up, and it was really good because, if our trucks get flooded out, is there an easy way to partner with another, locality or fleet that could take
Exactly.
care of that? Or
Right,
could we somehow help the residents get their trash to the convenience centers
right,
if they can't, if their cars are flooded, or
right.
Right.
Any thoughts on just kind of overarching language that would help us make sure that this was an equitable statement?
Maybe like building like municipal safeguards for the most impacted by climate. That's just, I don't know. I feel like safeguards is probably the best word to describe that, but I have no idea.
I like that.
Yeah, and I think the key is that it's proactive so that we're not reacting after it occurs, but that it's already in place and that everybody understands it.
Right.
And that the model is really solid. So it's basically, like flipping a switch.
That's excellent. I see that Sharon joined us.
Yes, can you put me in the industrial one? I don't know, I got kicked out.
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
I think you just mentioned, make it easier for folks when something occurs for their recycling to get picked up if they don't, or their waste to get disposed of when there's been a disaster. But I don't think we should just be waiting for a disaster. That's one of the issues that we notice on the Clean City Commission when it comes to waste, is that marginalized communities still to this day, as much as we've tried to do with the city, letting people know, and it's been very confusing over the past couple of years, this is how you can deal with large household waste. This is how you can deal with organic yard waste. If you put it out at this particular day, we'll come pick it up along with your recycling. Like, I still don't think the city has done a great job of getting to the communities who don't have their own vehicles to take things to the city dump. Or elderly folks who wouldn't be able to lift it up and put it in their truck anyway if they had it. So I think we need to look at ways that the city can, our municipality can better, again, educate and help folks to get their waste once they have it, whatever we've reduced it to locations, because we don't do a great job of that right now. We're trying, but it's not a great job. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's good. I hope I captured all these great thoughts. Oh, I should probably be recording this. Oh, if we're being recorded. Okay, we're good. So any other thoughts on this idea? We can always come back to these. But y'all are doing great. This is exactly what we want. Okay, so let's go to number 2. Demonstrate high impact, zero waste practices in the design and expansion of city operations that are highly visible and lead by example, aligning with the community's broader goals to educate and prepare the next generation. I think someone in the last meeting said, when you walk into a city building, it should just breathe sustainability. You should know that this is what we are. Is there some way to say that better or add any language to it?
I guess I'm wondering how this ties into like the different certifications that already have public weight. Like, people know what LEED means, or like maybe people know what LEED means.
I wouldn't be too sure about that. They just talked about LEED buildings here in Richmond, in our neighborhood, and like the blank faces were, it was like a wall of like people just staring at this guy.
Okay, never mind. I take back my statement.
Well, it might just be, we do have, you're right about those certifications, and, we have ACEEE and different challenges that we participate in. So more publicity about that for sure. But how could we better demonstrate it?
I think just small, like we could do it on a really start at a really micro level, where you know, buses and public buildings have what they have in Portland, which is not just one trash can, but 4 trash cans. And each one is clearly labeled so that you know what you put into each can. If the city starts doing that, then folks eventually start doing that at home. I mean, in Portland, they started, you know, at the airport, there's no trash can. There is a bank of cans, a bank of boxes, and you put your trash into that specific thing. But then that leads us back to, what is the city really doing with that recyclable waste material?
Exactly. Then
I
where
mean,
does it go from there?
and where
Right.
does it go from there? Right, because it's all well and good to put compostable forks in one thing and paper in another thing, and, you know, food products in a third. But if it's all just going to the landfill, I mean, that's where we really need to model. And that costs a lot of money. So maybe funding for that is important.
I like Elle's point about training. You know, employees have to have some kind of orientation, maybe new people coming in get some type of orientation, and then maybe there's some ongoing training for all employees around look around in your space and see where you're using a lot of paper. Is it being recycled? Look around your space and look in your break room and see whether or not you're throwing away a bunch of stuff. So maybe there could be ongoing trainings to remind employees about being a part of initiatives to reduce waste.
Right. One of the things that we discussed on the Clean City Commission a couple of years ago, and I don't know if the city has actually implemented it or not, is instead of the city of Richmond handing out bottles of water with the city of Richmond logo on it, we have watering stations, and you bring your own container when you go to an event, you know, when you go to the folk festival or you go to 2 Street or whatever.
Right.
You know, there are watering stations, and they let folks know in the advertisement and the information about the event on the city website or anything that we do in a PSA, you know, bring your own water container, and we have, you know, free water for you guys to drink, free spring water. And then we set up those stations, you know, and then maybe having, instead of a dog, you know, at the city dog parks with plastic bags, we do those, what do they call it? You do it in the ground. Anabolic is the word I'm thinking, but that's not it, I don't think. You know, you throw your dog poop into a hole in the ground and it gets eaten up by enzymes. So that the city is modeling those tiny, again, little micro things that lead people to say, I can do this in my own house. I can do this in my own life. And then we show them that what we do on our level can be replicated easily, you know, on a personal level, and it changes behavior.
Showcase the how about cost saving practices?
Yeah.
I like that. Those are good ideas. So I think you're talking about anaerobic digestion and
Thank you.
I
I felt like my mother, you know, like using some malapropism that
I'd never even heard of that, setting something like that up at an event. That's for dog poop. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we at one point we had 6 dogs, and so that was a lot of, and we have 10 cats. So it's, you know, like you use a lot of those bags aren't compostable. I don't care what anybody says. So we set up a couple of those dug a couple of those little holes in our backyard, and you have to put the enzyme stuff in there, but it's a lot less expensive. And in the long run, we're saving money and saving the city money by not throwing things into a landfill.
That's so cool. I love
It's pretty neat. Pretty neat. And it doesn't smell and you don't see it.
Yeah, your
It's
own
a little
composting toilet.
lid in the ground. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do worry about, we're, you know, in Highland Park, we're on a watershed, and I worry about the poo in the ground. But I think the poo in the ground is less of a problem than plastic bags in a landfill. So.
I have a quick question, which is talking about the publicity of public spaces and things like that. What's the city of Richmond's relationship to things like the Richmond Folk Festival or other sorts of like events like that?
That's a great question for Priscilla. She, I think, is in charge of a lot of that, especially she works for parks.
Mm-hmm.
I do know from talking to Darlene, who has done a lot of work with the Clean City Commission, that when groups come to put in an application for a permit to have an event, that they are connected with the city in terms of requesting recycled containers. So if you're having an event, you can indicate on there that you'd like a certain number of containers for plastic bottles, and that can be expanded to other things as people come for permits. And we can, talk about some other things that we can implement as people come to the city for permits to do those, to have those types of.
Right.
I guess what that immediately kind of spurs in my mind is whether that should be at the discretion of the festival or whether that should be kind of like a citywide, I don't want to say, yeah, or like your festival brought in X number of people last year. Therefore, like, regardless of what you request, you are going to get this number and you can like only request more, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's a good idea.
And the city
that
partners, I mean, the city is a partner with a lot of those festivals. So we have, I would think that we have the absolute, I mean, a lot of this is legal, and a lot of this that we're talking about, it's surprising how much, the state legislature has to give us permission to do some of these things. But I would think because the city of Richmond partners with a lot of these festivals, we have the absolute right to do that.
So Tom Griffin, is the Virginia Green director, and that's a program through the DEQ that you register an event as a green event or a zero waste event. And so maybe, I don't know what the history is, but maybe more of a partnership with that program would be part of what we're talking about. So I can say, I think we can talk about implementation next time, but I think these are great ideas about how to be more visible with these high impact practices. All right, so how about implement a climate neutral, and well, actually, let me go back to that last one. If we're talking about events, we want to consider what might not, is there a way that we're actually creating obstacles for anybody? I don't think so.
I don't think
I
so
don't
either,
know.
because
That's a good
we're
point,
not
though, because-
charging
Right.
for any of these. And I guess it could be an obstacle if we got to the point where we're like, well, you're going to be penalized if you have an event and you don't have recyclable containers, or if we charge for containers over a certain amount. But I don't see, I'm just looking at it from that event standpoint, I guess, broadly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I was just also thinking about the conversation that we had, Katrina, with the Clean City Commission about moving the recycling and toxic waste, hazardous waste events around the city. And we need to find a way to make that easier for folks who don't have their own cars to get to us.
Right.
Because right now what an amazing impact that has, and how many people we reach when we do it, but those are folks with their own vehicles.
Right.
We have plenty of folks that live here in Highland Park where I live who would love to participate in that, and they take the bus.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I think that's something else that we need to think about when we do these recycling events and these zero waste, like trying to create zero waste events, then we're not including everybody.
right.
And we're not
Yeah.
making it possible for
Mhm.
folks who the exact marginalized people that we're trying to reach to actually do it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that completely.
So we have to find a way to take these events, to neighborhoods, closer to neighborhoods, and
Yeah.
also create some kind of mechanism where, the truck can come do the sweep the day before and the day of. Like we have trucks that go out and do the sweep. You register and they come pick it up for you.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Now that is when we start getting into costs.
Right.
Because, and I think household hazardous is like low hanging fruit. Like that's something that we can quickly educate people about, and it's something that we can take to different places, but it's probably the most expensive in terms of having them come to neighborhoods. And I thought Julian had a great point about sponsorship.
Right.
And
And that can lead us right back into, partnering with other municipalities and partnering with what we're trying to do in the Clean City Commission is develop public, private, corporate partnerships.
Right, exactly.
Okay, great.
And there are places, there are corporations like Cap One who are just chomping at the bit to help us with things like that. They can't wait to start working with the Clean City Commission. And I'm sure that they would feel the same way about the city, given the right approach. So,
yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay, implement a climate neutral and waste-free city procurement policy that reduces single-use plastics and minimizes upstream emissions in all municipal purchase agreements.
So that's where, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where we could.
Sorry, have a question?
No, we kind of finished. Well, we're getting, it was just Sharon and I. We're getting a little challenged trying to do the racial equity and all those by ourselves. So she wanted to maybe take a look at the commercial group and see how they're doing.
Okay, so I'm going to send Sharon to commercial.
And you can do whatever you like with me. So.
Okay. Breakouts.
Or else I can go, I mean, I'm fine going back or I can keep working on it on my own, just if you want to try and figure out racial equity and that's.
Well, actually, if we could, this group is doing a great job with the equity tool. So if we can keep moving, we have another 35 minutes. So,
sure.
Or 40 minutes even. So maybe we can get to industrial a little bit. So would you like to stay here or go to residential or commercial?
I'll just hang out here for a bit. Hear what you guys are doing.
And then maybe at some point you could go check on residential because it's just
David
and Jason.
Oh, okay, sure. I mean, yeah, if you want me to go there too, that's fine.
Well, no, this is a good group, so join us. All right, we were just talking about implement a climate neutral and waste-free city procurement policy that reduces single-use plastics and minimizes upstream emissions in all municipal purchase agreements. And someone started saying something. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, is this where we start getting into regulations at the state level or having the authority as the city to do certain things? Like a couple of years ago in the Clean City Commission, we started talking about, what if it's possible to ban straws, if it's possible to ban plastic bags or, single-use plastic food implements and things like that.
Level. This is just for government contracts.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in the last session that I wonder if we're going to run into some equity issues here, especially when you're talking about small businesses that it could end up being a considerable expense for them to comply with something like this.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. I think we have a tendency to think about it in terms of, the city does contract with a lot of big companies, but there are also smaller ones, and the city is interested in expanding to use some other types of small businesses to
Right.
be
So I
involved in the
wonder-
procurement process. So
What if we added some language to this that said, and incentivize local minority owned small businesses to partner, somehow getting them to start moving in this direction too.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
incentivizing is a good way to put it because, well, for instance, I don't know, let's say the Richmond Public Libraries buy these fancy sparkly lollipops from me. I have switched to compostable plastic, like little cellophane things that the lollies go in, but it's much more expensive for me to do that. If the city is buying, 3,000 lollipops for me, those bags aren't feasible
Right.
for such a small business. However, if they pay me, 10% above that, that 10% will actually take care of that, or so there should maybe be a program for small businesses that qualify to have some financial incentive or to get a grant or a small tax break so that it makes it possible for them to start using more zero waste or recycled products or whatever. I don't know.
Or I wonder if we could reverse and do more of a reward system of, hey, we know you're a small business and you still use plastic bags because they're the cheapest or whatever, but we're going to reward you if you have something in place to make sure those get recycled or not thrown out somewhere or
Right.
whatever. Could we
Right.
incorporate some kind of reward system for those that maybe aren't there yet, but are saying, hey, we'll do something else to at least try to get on the path?
Right. And I mean, if you walk down Brooklyn Park Boulevard, you see lots and lots of small businesses, almost all minority owned, whether it's a Black business owned business, woman owned business, LGBTQ owned business. It's amazing that the diversity of business owners on that little stretch, but they're all really small and they're all still really struggling. And most of them are fledgling. And I know for a fact, because a lot of those folks are my, friends or colleagues, that they would like to be doing more. But it's just not always economically feasible. And it's not even economically feasible for them to compete with the city at this point. And it's buying locally on a city level is no different than buying locally on a household level.
Right.
You reduce waste, you reduce a carbon footprint. So if we can make it more possible for these very small businesses to be able to compete, especially when it comes to following green guidelines that the city puts down, then it's a win-win for everybody.
I like that. All right, so if you guys, I'm taking notes, but if you can think of specific language to add into the strategy, please volunteer it. So the next one, provide options for composting in all city-owned buildings, parks, and facilities, and make composted mulch available to city properties and residents. Should we revise that at all?
That one sounds pretty good, I feel like.
Okay.
Or I can't think of anything.
Any language we might want to add with community wealth considerations? Maybe job opportunities for landscapers, small minority-owned landscapers, that they get a discount,
Or they get first priority when it comes to making those contracts.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's, and I see this in the third one as well, like incentivizing small local, like you can just set, instead of looking at like kind of bigger statewide rules, you can look at like commitments on the local level to like, we prioritize like local, like minority owned businesses in all of our endeavors, like period. And like if we aren't, and then that gets into like government accountability. And I feel like that will attack multiple of these if you just set it as a rule of like municipal, like all arms of municipal
Yeah.
government. And then I'm not sure what enforcement looks like or how or who holds the city accountable to that standard that they've set for themselves, because we can't like rely on only the public
Mhm.
to, you know, like
Yeah.
catch when the, you know,
I
when
think
people
the
are out of
community
line.
wealth group is setting up those procedural overarching kind of checks and balances, but that's a great point.
But yeah, I think that way, you know, instead of being like, okay, for this one, we want to make sure that we are like, local landscapers are at the priority. It's like, that's just the way that we operate. We operate with like prioritizing our own people within our city limits first, and like making sure to like give those, you know, and
I'm also thinking in terms of beautiful and safe neighborhoods. You know, if we did set up, oh, this is more of a residential, never mind. So provide options for composting. And well, if all of our parks had a big compost pile, it could easily become a neighborhood dump, you know? So I'm thinking
Right.
we do need to be careful about the education, like community pride and ownership. Like this is the education piece of what this is, because it could also be a beautiful community garden, you know? But
I will say that the community gardens do have compost piles
Mhm.
that are run by the city.
Yeah, they do.
All right,
And
develop a public education and awareness campaign that focuses on high traffic municipal properties such as bus stops, parks, to encourage and promote effective waste reduction and recovery.
oh, that's interesting. Like,
That's a great one. The city has got these wonderful recyclable cans around Broad Street that get everything from A to Z thrown in it. And I
Right.
think really just, we've got to find a way to make it really easy for people to understand what goes in here, because it's counterproductive for baby diapers to be thrown in a recycling can. I'm completely and totally on board with an aggressive can we say aggressive public education campaign? um, um,
Nice.
just it's really important to you know, people need to know clearly that you know, there are options out there and here's how you can make it work.
Yep. Okay. Great.
here's
Something else?
oh, I was just thinking, we're talking about like signage and things like that, and I think that we are missing kind of like an audio aspect of it. Like,
Right.
it doesn't need to just be at the bus stop. You can have like announcements over the bus, like while people are sitting and riding, that are like pointing you in the direction of either resources or like as like a PSA, because, you know, like I sit on the bus now and I get the COVID announcements, which are important. I'm not, you know, those got to happen. But maybe there is opportunity for other sorts of, you know, so that way when we're talking about like equitable engagement for those that are like visually impaired or whatever,
That's true. Yeah.
making
Right.
sure that we can
Yeah.
make relatable in different sectors.
Right. That's a great point. And we've been talking in the Clean City Commission about taking it, you know, Channel 12, in my years of producing theater, they cannot wait for somebody to come on the noon news and talk about something so that they don't have to do a stupid commercial about, you know, replacement windows.
Right.
They're dying for folks to come and talk about stuff. And, you know, to make it a policy that the city does a certain number of PSAs, or, you know, it's written into any program that they do community outreach that includes television, that includes radio. You don't have to pay for that. There are ways that you don't have to spend a penny doing that.
All right, how about conduct an internal waste audit to identify priority waste streams for reduction efforts?
I love that. Yeah, I like that.
Is there a way to add a component of equity to this? I think it's waste streams and that transparency of where is the city sending our waste and who is being negatively impacted by that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of baked into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, oh, sorry, Katrina, were you about to say something?
No, go ahead.
I'm wondering, are we only focusing on reducing writ large, or are we also trying to hit the like repurposing aspect within this as well? Like, okay, this waste audit is only going to be about, you know, like diversion to other things, or
No, I think that reduction is everything. So if we did a waste audit and we have, you know, 5% is styrofoam, 25% is composting, you know, 15% is scrap metal, whatever those different categories are. And then we look at, okay, is there a way to first reduce what we're bringing in? Because that's always the first. And then is there a way to, you know, divert it, whether it's recycling or reuse or exchange or whatever. So I think that's just part of it. But is there some language we could add to this statement that would make that more obvious that that's what we're getting at?
I mean, not that I can think of. I just misunderstood.
I wonder if there's a way to add some type of privacy aspect. I feel like, you know, a waste audit, a report could get out somewhere, and then all of a sudden everybody in the community is up in arms because they find out the city is, you know, throwing soda cans or bottles away. I would just wonder if there's a way that, and I mean, I'm for transparency, but I also feel like things can get blown out of proportion. How can we make sure that it's going to be productive and not something that causes some kind of public outrage before the city can even implement some things to address it? Because that's the whole purpose of it, is to, you know, address these things and come up with strategies to reduce without it being, oh my gosh, somebody heard about this and now we've got to divert a bunch of manpower, you know, for a visual kind of.
I think that's a great
Right.
point, but I think the modeling is what this is about. So we do it, and you know, we do our internal audit, we look at our waste streams, we come up with the strategies, and then, you know, we start modeling how this should be done elsewhere.
Okay.
So I think that's part of it, you know.
It's got to take a hit again. Again, the city takes another hit.
But I guess I'm looking for some better language in that strategy because it's short. Is there a better way to say that?
I don't know.
Well, I guess at least like relating it back to the transparency, like the first step is conducting the internal waste audits. The second step being like formulation of like strategies and practices. And the third step being making that public information and like available, you know what I mean? So maybe they're not saying every step of the way, but that might be a way to.
It also lead to potential cost savings, you know, if you figure out ways to either reduce the amount of trash you create in the first place, or recycle, you know, separate out more recyclings from regular trash. And because I know, like when I was working for the schools, we paid different amounts for the different types of dumping, and you know, it could have been cheaper in effect to recycle more because we paid less for that to get empty than to create trash or something. I don't know. So
Um,
cost savings potential, I guess.
um, implement strategies for waste reduction efforts. It's not very sexy, but like the 12 R's, you know, getting at zero waste. Conduct an internal waste audit to identify waste streams and to implement strategies for reduction efforts. I don't know.
Based on highest priority or based on priority. Because I think the priority part should still definitely be in there. We've got to attack what's important.
All right.
Donna, am I wrong? I think this portfolio manager, you can track waste in that now too, right?
Oh,
believe.
I've never heard of that. That would be
Can.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Promote large-scale climate neutrality efforts and implement strategies that incentivize behavior change among city employees, such as elimination of desk-side trash bins, removal of single-use plastics and styrofoam, and regular waste minimization and sustainability trainings.
Yeah.
Anything we want to add to that or consider?
And yes, you can track it in portfolio manager. Anyway, just throwing that out. So it's yeah.
All right. Model institutional waste reduction and recovery practices that can be replicated in other Richmond educational, governmental, and healthcare institutions. This was getting at something Ryan Duckett sent me an email after the last meeting and said that we have municipal, we have residential, we have commercial and industrial, but we don't have an institutional one. And Richmond has a ton of institutions, you know, other state agencies and universities, hospitals, those big institutions, and that is a big part of our waste, our city waste stream. So because for climate modeling, our sectors are broken into industrial, commercial, and residential, institutional doesn't really have its own greenhouse gas tracking channel. So I was trying to come up with a way to add that kind of institutional modeling. You know, if Richmond comes up with these great practices, how can we get other big institutions in the city to follow suit? That's what that's getting at. Any thoughts?
That's a really hard one, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if I even like this one very much. Because I just, you know, I just feel like there has to be that extent, you know, there could be an educational or healthcare institution that already has a practice that the city needs to actually,
Yeah, that's
that
true.
they could model for the city. So I don't know if we should put the onus on the city to model certain things. I think maybe it could include language that says seek out, or maybe that could be part of the partnership above.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was just thinking that might be a way to collaborate, you
Yeah,
know, maybe create collaborations or partnerships so that it's not falling on us and taxpayers.
right. And by the time we, you know, research and find out something that we think is really great, and then we find out Capital One's been doing it for like 5 years already, or, you know, University of Richmond has been doing it, or whoever has
Right.
got something even better, you know, we're kind of behind the 8 ball.
I just want to be sure here that we're talking about like we're talking about partnerships across the public-private sector now. We're not keeping it confined within.
Right.
This is
Right.
more about institutional waste. It's just a really big waste stream. You know, these big institutions, whether it's state agencies or hospitals or universities.
Okay, so this is a blend. This is not, this is like all, so it is also getting at the private partner as, or, you know, aspect of it as well. I guess, because if it was just contained to like other governmental entities, I think that having that report back structure as being tied into like the first one of the like the inner agency partnerships, like greater you know, like municipal partnerships, but this is getting at something different, so never mind.
Yeah, if you think about like VCU or U of R,
Right.
Mhm.
colleges, public schools.
So the city of Richmond deals with VC, you know, I never really thought about this before, but we do. So we pick up MCV's non-medical waste. We pick up VCU's garbage. Is that right?
I don't think so. I think that's considered, they probably,
They have to contract to do that themselves. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
but
I was just freaking out. I was like, my God, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
all right, well, think about it. I think that's a big undertaking, but I think I like the way you said, you know, seek best practices, like learn from them. Maybe
Mhm.
there's already good stuff going on that we can
Right.
replicate.
Yeah.
All right, expand and modernize or anaerobic digestion at the wastewater treatment plant. That's, I don't personally have anything to add to that unless you guys do.
I don't know enough about anaerobic digestion to,
Yeah, it's like Jeannie was saying, breaking down all of the waste at the treatment plant, using it as biofuels, you know, preventing it from being emitted as pollutants.
My hesitation there, like I do agree with modernizing for wastewater treatment because that's kind of something that you cannot get around. My like concern is with expansion of anaerobic digestion as a thing, because that will not encourage kind of the reduction overall. Does that make sense? Like things that could be composted might end up in an anaerobic digester, and like that, it's still methane. Like it's still, you know, it's at the end of the day, like yes, we're capturing it, but then we're burning methane. So yeah, I guess keeping it very particular to wastewater treatment, which is like sewage, what else are we going to do? Or I don't know. I just think that gets into like a tricky area, especially if we're looking at Richmond as a model for other cities. Like we happen to be in a metro area, but like there are more agricultural areas, and like encouraging anaerobic digestion in general, like will lead to some weird stuff on like chicken farms that exist here, you know, like things like that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Also like looking at where, if we're talking about expanding anaerobic digestion at wastewater treatment plants, are we also looking at like more wastewater treatment plants, and then where are they going to be? If we're, you know, trying to set up a system for like the more biogassy type stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say that one more time. I want to make sure I captured your thought.
Oh, sure. As we are talking about expansion of anaerobic digesters, does that mean the building out of newness and of where that infrastructure is being placed, and why is it being placed there? And
That's a good point. You know, they put the soil mitigation company, RICO, right at the bottom of Highland Park. And right between, you know, the first and only Black owned neighborhood in Richmond and a project in Highland Park. And they made sure that the highway cut all of that off from everybody else, so that the smell and the gases that come from Rico come right up into this black neighborhood.
So this last one, increase staff resources to implement and enforce sustainable purchasing policy for municipal procurement. We could just add that to the other one about the
Right.
procurement
I
policy.
agree. Yeah.
All right. Any equity considerations on staffing? It'd be nice if we could offset this with some kind of, scrap metal, recycling revenue pays for new staff to
Yeah.
implement purchasing policy.
Right.
I guess also just if we're talking about this is a tough one. If we're advocating for like increased staff capacity and we want to make sure it's in an equity lens, we like need to be maybe not like involved in the process, but having some sort of like knowledge, oversight, whatever it may be, as RVAgreen 2015, not necessarily us, about what hiring practices look like and what the equity, you know what I mean, measures, metrics for hiring at the municipal level are, if we're talking about job creation.
Okay, great. So we have a few more minutes, so let's jump down to industrial. It looks like she got through them. So create an educational campaign centered on an infographic tracking all waste generated in Richmond. So this isn't just government. Now we're looking at all of Richmond from cradle to grave, updated with each plan revision. So RVAgreen 2050 every 5 years. By sector, weights, commodity, impacts on upstream and downstream emissions, informing best practices for waste reduction by all Richmonders. So belongs in objective 2 or 3. Yeah, it just kind of landed here, so we might need to move it somewhere else. But what do you guys think about this?
I just feel like education can be more than an infographic is my thing. I think that that's really cool. I think that that's a very digestible thing.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I hope it ends up, in terms of equity, I hope it ends up looking and being more understandable than what that statement is right now. Because
Right.
it feels
Yeah, that's
really wordy and important. And I'm like, well, how is this gonna translate to your regular old person who needs to see where we are and where we need to go? So I hope that it's going to, I understand the idea and concept, but it sounds complicated, and I don't want that complication to then translate onto who we're trying to give the information to, and they're confused.
right.
Yeah.
I was trying to say is show the waste stream in a picture.
Right, but it sure got a lot more wordy than
Draw
that.
a picture of our waste stream. That's kind of it.
Okay, great. Advocate for state and regional policies aimed at reducing industrial waste. So
Yeah, and there I would like to maybe suggest that we the city's done this before. I mean, the city of Richmond a few years ago invited any citizen that was interested, and they reached out through churches and civic groups to train folks to be a lobbyist on behalf of the city of Richmond during the state legislative process. So we all met. They gave everybody a very small stipend, and they fed everybody lunch and breakfast for a couple of days. And they taught us how to, go to the state and lobby on behalf of the city. And it would be great if we had a program like that, if we could create a program like that to educate citizens, especially folks who are have been marginalized, um, to be a voice, to be a proactive voice, to be able to go as a group to the state and to the city to lobby for these things. I mean, that goes back to education, but that also is very empowering when you give folks who have never been given the tools, tools to go and speak for themselves. And it's very, very difficult for lawmakers, whether at the city or state or federal government level, to look somebody in the eye and say no. I can't tell you how many times, like my city councilwoman has said, there were people there who said if one person had stood up and said, yes, we need more streetlights in this neighborhood, we would have allocated funds for that. And the neighborhood was not empowered to go and speak for themselves. And they didn't even know how to get to City Hall or what to say about it. So if we can teach people in a very, directed way, how to go and be an advocate, that would be great.
That's great. I love it.
And then do we need to put any specifics on industrial waste? It seems so nice and broad, and I wonder if we need to at least say, for example, and maybe some of the priority ones like water contaminants or paper or something. I mean, it could be advantageous to keep it broad because then we can just come at different levels. But I wonder if
Well, that has come up before. It was in the notes from last week. What is industrial waste? What are we talking about? So we probably need to do more to,
make that specific. Yeah.
yeah, so that's good. Okay, great. So we just have a few more minutes. Let's see, require industrial facilities to conduct their own waste audits and publish findings to identify potential impacts on the surrounding community. Create a landfill diversion program and online materials marketplace for exchanging industrial byproducts, waste streams for identification of alternative end uses. That's not a good.
Can we go back to number 3 for just a second? Something just kind of leapt out at me. So we require these industrial facilities to conduct an annual waste audit, but who's actually conducting that audit for them and who is looking at the findings?
And then what are they doing
And
about
then,
it?
right,
What's
because
gonna be-
I mean, that's like telling the Army, the Defense Department, you guys have a sexual abuse problem, it needs to be looked into, and then a bunch of old guys sit down and say, hey, we just looked at everything and it's not there, so we're
looks
cool.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So, the online marketplace for exchanging industrial byproducts and waste streams.
Oh yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, like could spawn business development around excess materials.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, if someone's taking old tires and making artwork out of it or something,
yeah, I know that like Anheuser-Busch they have 100% recycling because they take all their hops and, give it to the agricultural community if they'll come pick it up. So.
Cool.
Okay, so create a landfill diversion program. Oh, we did that. Attract industries that use new technologies to recycle waste into biofuels. That came from last week. Someone was saying that we really want to make Richmond we want to attract these sustainable companies. This is the come-to place for big new ideas.
Biofuels are just so, they have a mixed reaction from folks. So I'm really interested as to how, you know what I mean? I feel like people respond that way the same way that they do like nuclear, which is like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that one needs to be fleshed out a little bit more with some greater understanding of like, because again, biofuels, a lot of it is getting into that like anaerobic digestion type things. Or like, I don't know, if you want to talk about like biofuels and like retrofitting cars, that
Yeah, that's a good point.
And maybe some, just like with industrial waste, we may need some clarification on biofuels. What
Yes, yes.
are they? What types of biofuels are going to be best for this area? That kind of thing.
Yeah. All right, well, we just have about 1 minute left, so you guys can look through the rest of these on your own if you want to add anything else, and I'll say that to the bigger group too. We got about halfway through the industrial ones, but these are the bigger picture ones, you know, circular economy, what are our manufacturers and industries doing, and stuff like that. Yeah, and Wendy, that was helpful the way you guys looked at this about trying to combine them, and I appreciate that. That's great. Hi, David. How is
Hey,
everybody? All right. Are we all back?
Seconds.
Brienne's group, right?
Yeah, I think they have a few seconds left.
Okay, great. How'd it go, Jason?
Whee!
oh, we had a blast.
Whee!
We moved all the words around. We added some words. We came up with ideas. We smashed
Great.
capitalism.
All right.
How about you, Tom? How did it go?
Well, we went a little more old school. We're going to require recycling and composting, and you know, at the commercial level, certainly, we'll fix some things.
Great. Kayla, any feedback from your perspective? I think she's in school. I always feel bad. This is such an awkward time for her.
Hold on 1 minute, my teacher's calling me. I'll be right with you.
Yeah, I feel bad. How about you, Sharon? Thank you for taking a stab at those industrial ones. I know some of them are tricky.
Yeah, we had some ideas. I think one missing piece here is that it'd be good to get more information on what comprises the industrial sector right now, and what is the city's economic development like? Are we trying to attract more manufacturing, or are we becoming more of a service economy?
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. All right. Well, so I think I'm still sharing my screen with everyone, right?
Yeah.
So now this is yours. I think Wendy you have the link to this tool, and you have until 5 o'clock tomorrow to add any more comments, any more thoughts to it, or just email us and we can add your thoughts in there. But we're going to be cleaning this up and sending it out for city staff and roundtable feedback. So let me stop sharing my screen. Or actually, I guess I need to go back to the presentation. So continue adding to that spreadsheet till the end of day tomorrow. Our next meeting is 3 weeks from today on March 25th. And so Wendy also put the feedback survey in the chat if you want to give us some feedback on today's meeting, what we could do differently, better, all that good stuff. And then do you have any updates or upcoming events or resources or comments that you'd like to share? Feel free to speak up or put it in the chat. Tom.
Yeah, just simply, the Virginia Green Travel Alliance, we are putting on our annual conference. And so that's April 28th and 29th. Got a pretty amazing lineup. We have the head of sustainability for REI as one of our keynotes. Another notable one is Earl Hunter with Black Folks Camp 2. So just an amazing speaker and just, an amazing group of panelists and things lined up with government updates, and we're certainly doing plastic bags and composting and recycling and the whole 9 yards. So
Excellent.
love for you to come. Probably just virginiagreen.net will get you to, that's our website. And it is one of the pull downs up in the upper right-hand corner.
Okay, great. Excellent, thanks. Sounds like a place we should all be. Anything else?
The city is starting our 2021 neighborhood cleanup schedule. And so we go into different zones starting this Saturday, the 6th. You can go to the richmond.gov or RVA, I think it's RVA.com to see the map. But we basically tackle different zones on a Saturday from March through September. And that's an opportunity for residents to put out things that, you know, typically we might not pick up. So we're talking some bulk items, et cetera. So please go to the website to see when we may be in your zone, in your area, and the items that can and cannot be put out, because people do need to be educated about what we will and will not pick up. And it is also an opportunity. We have some areas that partner with community cleanup groups, so they go out ahead of time to do a little bit of sprucing, and then the city comes through to pick some things up. So I encourage you to go to the website and look at that schedule, check out the zones, and if you can get the word out about that, it'd be great.
Excellent, thank you. Tracy.
Yeah, hi guys, and Katrina, we will definitely promote that on the Keep Virginia Beautiful social stuff as a part of Shiver in Virginia. Which started beginning of March here. So finally some decent weather. We'd love for you guys to participate. If you go to our website, keepvirginiabeautiful.org, there's a pop-up that'll come up in the, it's super easy to participate, and we hope that you'll get out. You've got, I guess, 27, 26 more days to get out and do beautiful things and win some cool prizes. So.
Awesome.
I just had from what Katrina was saying about the bulk item pickup and things, you know, sort of ties into our circular economy and, you know, sharing ideas, you know, with as far as materials, because many of those things get thrown out, potentially could have been used for somebody for furniture or what have you. So just, and then also just, I think that we could, you know, the bulk item type things, especially in the downtown areas, if we had designated areas where people could take those things versus the alleys, you know, in various times that you know, the students and, you know, renters and things would benefit from that, but that would also help the environment.
Well, and if everybody doesn't know about free, oh, well, not everyone's on Facebook, but if you are, there's a page, I think it's called Free Cycle. And literally, if you don't want something, it's free. And you say it's out on my front porch, and literally mostly in half an hour, it's gone. So it's a really good way to get rid of something that's really has a little bit of life left. And it, especially in the fan, people love it.
I was thinking of that because it's like sort of informal networks. Like, you know, we have a guy that comes through here every Sunday and picks up any metal that's in the alley, and people know that. So you put it out there, and he's very reliable. And then like next door, I've been like getting rid of all kinds of stuff through next door, and same thing. It's like, you know, he'd say it's out on my front porch, and it's gone.
That's cool.
Or it's in the alley.
Yeah, so that's a strategy, right? We need to figure out how to make that accessible to everyone, not just people on Facebook or.
Yeah, totally. Right.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Please go back in and add that kind of commentary to the drafting guide. I appreciate all of your time this morning so much. Thanks for giving us a couple of hours, and we'll see you in 3 weeks.
It's time to clean out your last year's growth and seed the new stuff now.
Great, thanks, Jason.
Very nice.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye all.
Bye.
Right.